Our next guest has brought a sea change in Indian cinema. She's made making women centric films that actually told realistic stories of Indian women a trend. She debuted as a director in 2011, and her second film, Lipstick Under My Burqa, made her a household name. Her Amazon series, Made in Heaven, which dealt with complex relationships, earned her accolades as well. Please welcome director Alankrita Srivastav to talk about her experience telling stories that matter. Senior journalist Kaveri Bamzai will join her in the conversation.
Lankrita, it's such a pleasure to have you with us, and it's been so wonderful to see your journey, to see you evolving with every movie and series that you do, and to create characters that are, could be one of us. And I think that is just so wonderful, especially for women. I think. As I think everyone says, you cannot be what you cannot see. So representation of all kinds of women is so important, and I think you've been the flag bearer of that. So thank you very much. I think from all the women who consume entertainment, I think they really appreciate that, and from all the men too. I think they. In fact, I'd like to ask you. Perhaps that's a good beginning. How have men in general seen, perceived your work?
First of all, thank you so much for having me and coming to your first question about how men perceive it. I think it's changing, to be
Yeah.
very honest. I mean, a lot of my friends who are men, and are very honest in their sort of critique and review of my work, they often have told me that they feel like, the men are not well rounded and there's too little of them. And I've always called them out on the fact that, it's so strange that for decades and decades, we've had stories where men have been the center of the universe, and no one has really questioned why women really are, existing as like small parts and
Yeah.
really appendages and like trophies or like arm candy, or like just in a very token kind of way. And when women are making stuff which has women at the forefront, the question is like, but why are the men like this? I think I also have taken that little bit of criticism in my stride. I do try to, I feel like I try to etch out the male characters a little more step by step. But the thing is that the stories that I deal with, I feel I am creating a very female universe.
Yeah.
And, the stories are through the points of view of uh, the female characters. So then it's very difficult for me to give space to the independent journeys of those men then,
Hmm.
because I feel like there's only that much space. And if I want to really dig deeper into what's going on with the women, um, then the men really do exist only as they exist for those female characters, and we only see them like that. So I feel like there is often like a kind of a reaction that men have, because I think they don't want to see themselves like that. And I had very harsh reactions, even when Lipstick had come out, when men feeling like, what is this? And also a lot of men feeling very moved by the end of it,
Yeah.
starting with feeling like we don't want to see this kind of a story, but then at the end feeling like, oh my god, we've never thought about, a woman from this perspective, or thought so deeply about a woman's life. So I think now I feel people have started expecting uh, this kind of a world from my work, and I think they have become more open. I think a lot of men were much more open, I feel, to Dolly Kitty, in terms of like, I got a lot of very positive kind of responses from a lot of men, which I thought was interesting. Also, they did feel that the male characters, had a little more to them. So I do feel that it's a sort of a journey and a growth. I think even, we as artists, we also constantly kind of growing. But I do feel that even if people have a negative reaction, I feel as if it's going to make you think two extra thoughts about women and their place in society, then I think it's fine, or even if you feel overall like, I can't understand this story, but there are few moments that kind of move you. For me, that's enough. I feel like, something has kind of like, I've made someone think about, or something, or feel something. But Yeah, but I mean, it's a given that there will be some people always who will be like, why are the men not getting enough space? But it's okay.
No, in fact, there's something very interesting that Pooja Bhatt was telling me the other day when I spoke to her about Bombay Begums. And she said the men in the series actually are pretty supportive. And, they are not the ones who sort of locked up the women. It's the women themselves who have to open the door for themselves. And she felt that the men actually were very good, Imad's character and Danish's character, of course, even Shahana's partner, Vivek. So all of them, she felt, were not the ones who were imprisoning the women. It was the women themselves who had to break free. So I thought that was also an interesting perspective.
Yeah, no, that's definitely true, because I feel like, I think even in Dolly Kitty, I was working with that feeling that they have to, that there's a lot of internalized
Yeah,
patriarchy that
yeah,
one has to overcome. And I think in Bombay Begums too, I think the fight really is not just against men actively stopping you, but actually what society has made you believe that this is how you should live, and also like the kind of conditioning and sort of societal circumstances. So I do feel like, we all as women, I think, like, we do have a lot of internalized patriarchy, and it is a kind of journey to sort of unlearn that, to also be able to free ourselves and to actually maximize our potential. Otherwise, we are so used to being so apologetic about our own existence that I think there's a big internal journey for us too.
right. You yourself have undertaken that internal journey as well, Alankrita. Your work has also shown that, I would say. But do you feel that in your own work, that your work has helped you overcome maybe some biases that you yourself had, which you didn't realize?
I feel it's still a journey, because I still feel like there's a lot inside me that a lot of unlearning I still need to do. uh, but definitely I feel like, uh, like I do feel that maybe there has been like more of a feeling, like a feeling of being trapped, which I may have felt earlier, which maybe is now getting undone. But I still feel that, like I feel, and maybe I'm wrong, but that's my perception, I still feel like the way, you know men sometimes so confidently they own a space
Yeah.
and they own the world and they feel so entitled. I'm always shocked at that, because I feel I'm always so happy with crumbs.
I
I'm
know.
like, chalo, a little thing has worked out. I'm like,
Yeah.
yay. And so I feel like it's a journey, because we've not been, and I really feel it's not so much to do just with one's personal upbringing.
Hmm.
It's just like how society has kind of made it feel. So I feel like that sense of entitlement, and I don't mean entitlement in a negative sense, but just
Yeah.
that feeling that uh I too can have my place in the sun, and I
Right.
too can have, like, say, whether it's resources for a film or anything. I feel like I'm still at a very like stage of feeling happy for very small things, and then I have to tell myself, no, I should aim for like better
Yeah,
and more.
exactly. So I think that's a journey, that imposter syndrome. That's a journey I think every woman undertakes. And I think especially successful women have that sense that, oh, why me? Why am I so successful? Do I deserve it? And there's always that guilt. But talk a little about, we've talked about diversity and we've talked a little about representation. Talk a little more about that representation, because it's not women from just a particular class. You're also able to show a diverse set of women, religion, class, a profession. And that is so empowering, because that again shows you that it is possible to live another way.
Yeah, I think I became more aware of it after my first feature film, Turning 30, which was
Yeah.
very much centered on a woman, like, like a world which I was very familiar with and comfortable with, which felt closer to my own lived reality in terms of socio-economic strata. So I think the one thing I did want to do after turning 30 is to explore women from a different class. I think that was something, I don't think it was a conscious thought, but I think it was an instinctive thing that I wanted to do, because I know that for my first film, I think it was just very instinctive to just go with what was most familiar and most comfortable. That was the story that came to me very naturally. But I did then after that want to go into a different landscape in terms of women who don't have the same economic resources. I think for me now, I've been thinking a lot about that, and I do feel that a lot of choices we make are very different when you have that kind of economic strength and that sense of financial backing, um, vis-a-vis when you don't. So I did feel that I wanted to explore what being from a different class, and also that does it mean that, and which is not always the case, but sometimes if you're in a smaller town and you come from not so much financial privilege, then it's harder to break off a lot of uh, barriers that are being kind of put into your life. And yet I feel like women are very spunky and they always find ways. So I think I wanted to kind of get into that space that, even if you are confined by economic circumstance and your class, you will still have dreams and desires and still have like a way of kind of breaking out. And I feel like I kind of continued that theme into Dolly Kitty, where the women, are how that financial independence
Yeah.
kind of has an interplay with the kind of choices that you make, and then of course taking it out of the traditional family structure. I do feel caste is something that I'm kind of learning about more. I did I didn't go into caste, but I just placed in Dolly Kitty the characters, uh, just made them from a certain caste,
Yeah.
not out of like I didn't actually go into what is there, but just to I kind of like I feel like there's a lot of in terms of that needs to be explored, and I think I haven't yet gone there. And I feel like I'm still in the process of educating myself more to be able to reflect more diversity in terms of caste. But I think it's been nice in a way. Bombay Begum's the kind of socioeconomic strata is similar to my first feature.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I don't know. I guess it's interesting to explore women in from different kinds of walks of life. And I think particularly in Bombay Begums, I enjoyed having Lily there as a person to sort of reflect off, like she's come from a totally different world, and the choices they make as how she perceives them, and kind of have some kind of a sort of a contrast. But I think that there's so much to explore. I think it's really just the tip of
It's
the
just
iceberg.
endless, and also sexuality. I mean, that's another aspect that you've explored so well, and especially in Bombay Begum's, through Plobita's character, she's so confused, and a lot of us are like that, and especially she's a young woman. She's come from a smaller city, and I like the way that everyone sniggers when she says Indore. They say, "Oh, I am Indore," and she says, "No." Jindal Institute. But it's so interesting. There's so much of that class bias there, and also her sexuality. She's not quite sure whether she's a lesbian or heterosexual. So those characters as well are very important to reflect the kind of reality there is, isn't there?
Yeah, 100%. I just feel that this heteronormative
Yeah,
kind of world is very unreal, and it's not very reflective of society. So, because I do feel like everyone is not heterosexual, everyone is not cisgender. So I think it's nice to have space for, people who are queer. And so I think like that kind of loosening up, I feel, is something that is very, very, important. And and I think having that kind of representation on screen is also very, very important, because I just feel that we can't keep representing a world which is, just painted in like that kind of monotone without reflecting the diversity of society actually. And I just feel like it's so interesting, and there are so many things to explore when one has a kind of an empathetic look. One can look at characters with empathy, and whether they're exploring their sexuality, whether they are heterosexual, and they kind of have suppressed themselves in some way, or it's like there's some kind of discovery, or if they are like queer. I just feel like it's interesting to see that journey, and for me that journey becomes very intrinsic to the journey of the character. So even in turning 30, I remember I did have like the coming out of this one girl,
hmm.
which was played by Tilotma, and so it was not a very deep exploration, it was kind of just there. So I do think that we have a long way to go, but I think it's nice to have in our stories, to have worlds and like which reflect a little more than just like the straight jacketed kind of characters.
What is the kind of reaction that you got to Bombay Begums? I'm intrigued, especially of older women, because I think I've never seen a woman on screen, talking about menopause, which is a lived reality for so many women of a certain age. But who talks about it? Who shows it? Who shows hot flushes? I've never seen that. How have women reacted to it?
I think I've got a lot of love for the show from
Ah,
a lot of women around the world, in fact. So it's been quite interesting. But of course, also interestingly, a lot of women have, they're finding the show too uncomfortable also. There are some,
really? Yeah.
yeah, they're feeling like there's too much sex and sexuality, and why is there menstruation and menopause? And I guess like there's also this feeling of not being comfortable seeing that kind of lived reality being represented on screen. I did have this reaction even during Lipstick, where some people were really feeling like, why is uh,
Bua's character, especially.
yeah, older woman, and why does she have to have the, you just, so I feel like there is a bit of that, I have to be honest. Some women have, like some of my friends' moms, they're like, please send her my love, but please tell her there was just too much sex in the show. So there is um a bit of that, but a lot of women actually who are older have actually messaged me and called me and sent me messages saying that they're feeling like, like it's really nice for them to see such full bodied women, and to really see the female experience in many, it's many kind of contours, rather than just uh, seeing women in a particular way. I think what also happens is, I think we've become very used to like women beyond a particular age. Even if you see them either as this one like very powerful person, or like vindictive person, or like this sacrificing kind of person. So women beyond a certain age, definitely, I think like we've not seen so many well-rounded
Yeah.
characters, and mostly they're quite asexual.
Yeah.
And I think even the ones who are feeling like that, I think the fact that they're thinking about
Yeah.
it and like all of that is quite interesting. But yeah, but a lot of older women have really felt very, very comforted actually by seeing the show.
It's so interesting. You can't show two women who are too young, you can't show women who are too old. I mean, what do you do? You can't have a straight jacket that you can only show a certain demographic. It's not possible as a writer. How do you do that?
Yeah, and I think this obsession, honestly, with women in their 20s,
Yeah,
now a little bit it's gone into early 30s, which is
30,
great.
just about.
Just about, yeah. It's very strange. I think I've never understood it, because also I feel like, characters at that stage, they haven't lived life
Yeah,
enough.
yeah,
And they've also grown up enough. So I just feel like it's a very strange kind of thing. But I think it's our obsession with seeing women as, I mean, our obsession with love stories and imagining the protagonist of the love story to always be this very beautiful virginal girl who's
yeah.
very pure, and when she'll marry it will be forever and for good and all of that. So I think it kind of stems from that, and I think we really are a very ageist kind of um, society. And I think especially on screen, particularly with women, I think it's so strange that our male actors, they are continuing to work.
Oh, yeah,
They still play college sweethearts and
and
romantic heroes, and there's no problem. And they keep working with female actors who are decades and decades younger than
yeah,
them. And that's just to maintain their own screen age.
exactly.
They want to keep looking younger. But like a female actor is so quickly written off, saying that, oh, now she's too old or whatever. But I'm glad things are changing, a little bit. I think in the last few years, it's definitely become a bit better.
Yeah, and as you said, our male actors are actually acting opposite, sometimes daughters of women actors that they worked in early on in their careers, or, in some way or the other, or colleagues, daughters of their colleagues. It's so bizarre, but it's accepted.
Yeah, I find it very weird.
But it's quite creepy.
It's pretty strange. And I guess again it's a reflection of society, how like the man is ever young, like evergreen, and he's always considered attractive. And somehow like a woman post 35, so you can just forget it. Like So I think it's very odd, and I think we really do need to start seeing more mature female characters, because I feel, characters who are in their 40s, 50s, 60s, they're more interesting for me, simply because I feel they've experienced much more in life, and I feel like the decisions they make will not be so black and white, because I feel like they've experienced life more, so they know that things are not one way or the other. It's like life is quite complicated, and what you think, at least personally what I feel, what you feel in your 20s, that sense of like, all of that pretty much goes by in the decades to come, because you see so many ups and downs, so many things happen in everyone's life, that you don't react in the same way to those same things, and your lived reality has shaped you in a certain way, which makes you much more complex and layered. So I actually think it's very interesting to explore women who are supposedly past that kind of prime women.
Sexually active age. As
Yeah,
if there's a button that they can switch off.
exactly,
Like
exactly.
Neelima Azim's character, I think, in Dolly Kitty, her daughter is, in fact, the most judgmental of her. And that dynamic, again, was so interesting.
Yeah, yeah, because I do think that because I feel like the same point that we were talking about earlier, this internalized
Yeah.
patriarchy that women kind of live with, have to, like, something has to jolt you out of it. You And I think we do judge our own older women, whether it's sometimes our mums or our aunts or our grandmoms, uh, very very harshly, and I think it is a reflection on us. So I do think that that journey does have to be taken, because sometimes you're like, oh, like what you might expect of your mother, and then you realize that you're also putting her in that kind of a box,
Exactly.
and not like letting her have that kind of space to be a woman, because you've so put her into that thing of that she must be like the best mother and the greatest mother. So I also feel like, for me, I think an examination of the idea of motherhood is very interesting, because I feel that is one of the ways that Indian society has used to kind of um, put women into that box. And it's like, once you're a mother, then basically you're no longer, like, you don't have like agency, or you
Yeah.
shouldn't have desires, or all your decisions, you should be this perfect mother who puts motherhood before anything else. And I find that interesting to explore, because I don't think that women suddenly, just because, of course, they're responsible for their children, but it doesn't mean that the rest of their being somehow cease to exist.
Right. So, Alankrita, how do you maintain authenticity? Increasingly as one becomes successful, one also becomes distanced from reality, distanced from other experiences. How do you ensure authenticity? It's such a difficult thing, isn't it?
I think I might have to worry about it later. I don't feel like that. I feel I'm a very grounded person by nature, and so I guess honestly, I've never thought about it until right now that you're asking me this question, but it is an interesting question. I do feel that it can kind of happen, but I don't know. I guess there's no answer for it really, but I do feel like there's a sense of, I feel, to not become, I mean, I don't want to sound cheesy, but I do feel that there's something that, about not being arrogant and being a little humble, I think is important. That I just feel that what you said, that I think one shouldn't lose touch with life per se. I think that is very important. And I don't know really, but I guess, to continue to read a lot, to continue
Yeah.
to have conversations with people,
Conversations with people. Yeah.
I think that is very very important. And I think to not take yourself too seriously, that I feel is really important, because, and that again, I don't want to sound like I'm this thing, but I do feel that honestly a lot of women filmmakers, they will continue to grow, because I feel they don't have um that vibe which honestly a lot of male filmmakers develop. They'll suddenly, like, they are like, I'm god, and then have
Yeah.
full,
Yeah.
like a band of people around them who only say yes
Entourage.
to
Yeah.
this entourage and whatever they say. So at a party also you'll find them, it's like, they're talking and then everyone else is listening. I feel I know a lot of women filmmakers, none of them is like that.
Yeah.
So I feel like maybe it just comes from our own experiences and
Yeah.
we don't tend to become like that. But I think it's important to always listen, to have your ear to the ground and not take yourself too seriously. I just feel at the end of the day, we're all just, doing our bit, telling our stories and trying to make some work that makes some sense to us and hopefully to some other people. So I feel like to not take ourselves seriously. And also, I think for me personally, I'm very scared of not growing. And I think that is my biggest fear
Right.
because I feel like, like that for me would be the worst thing if I felt like either, like, how does uh, one keep growing? And I think
Yeah.
the only way is to constantly be in a space where you don't think you're perfect or you've
Yeah.
arrived or everything is like okay, but to keep feeling, and also to every new thing I think giving it that same kind of love and enthusiasm and labor, without thinking that now I know it all and now in this one I'll just crack it because I just know how to do it. But I think always to go to set or to your computer if you're writing, or to set if you're shooting, with that sense of like, I have to strive to do my best. I
Yeah.
guess that's it. I don't know, don't know if there's any other formula.
How is it working with other women? Increasingly, you have, whether you're working with women producers or working with women writers, for instance, for Made in Heaven. I think all the writers are women, and so are the producers, Zoya and Rima. And at Netflix as well, you have women bosses. So, do you feel comforted by that? Is that something that makes you feel empowered, or is that not a factor?
No, I think it's happened very naturally and organically. So it's not like I'm like, I want to only work with women, but it's just happened so organically. And it started by Ekta deciding to distribute lipstick when nobody was willing to
Nobody
do it.
wanted to do it, right?
Nobody wanted to do it. And I knocked at like at every door. So I think
Then you went to her and she watched it and decided
she
to.
watched it and
Yeah.
then she decided to back it. Yeah.
What did she tell you when you?
I mean, first she watched it and I think first she had only kept aside half, like to watch half the film because she felt like she probably is going to be some festival type film, which she won't like not necessarily be that interested in. But she saw it. Her team had already seen it,
Right.
and then she saw half of it, and then she saw so then the first time she only saw half of it, but she really enjoyed it. So she came back and saw the. I think I went back and showed her the second half. It was a conversation that went on because they had to figure out how can she actually release, like how will the strategy work, and we hadn't got a censor certificate till then.
Right.
So it was a kind of like a conversation that went on, but at least she really, I mean, her gut instinct was that she should back it, and she really kind of followed up with that, even though she felt like I mean, and she knew that I'd been going everywhere and nothing had kind of worked out. So I think that happened very naturally, and she has a team of like amazing women who work with her, and I get along with them really well.
They're
Ruchika,
all women again,
they
no?
all at Balaji. Yeah, so Ruchika is one of the producers who works there. She's fabulous, and she and I get along really well. And then Dolly Kitty happened, and it really happened so organically. They were like, "Let's do something together." I told them I have this story, and it just kind of worked out. And even with Zoya and Rima, I just they had read an early draft of Lipstick because it had gone to some lab, and I think Zoya had been asked to read all the scripts of the lab or whatever. So that's why they had called me, and we just got along really well. And it just it was very, again, very instinctive that we just had a lot of fun writing, and then I ended up directing 2 of the episodes. And um yeah, so and I think, and even with Bombay Begums, my producers are actually the original producers are these women from Churn and Entertainment in LA.
Okay.
And I
Okay.
was in LA, and then like I was hanging out with, like, my agent was making me meet some people, and I met somebody, and then I don't know, and then it just kind of happened that we ended up pitching. They wanted to do something with me. We ended up pitching the story of Bombay Begums, and they really liked it. And it was so interesting because they were women from a totally different culture, but they were
Right.
so excited, and they made me develop it. And there were again women at Netflix who greenlit it, and so I don't know. It's happened honestly very organically. I haven't, said that I want to do this, but it really helps because I feel they understand the material.
Yeah.
And like, so if if I say I want a largely women's team, they get it. There's no, like, I don't have to be like, why do I want it? They're like, yeah, I think it makes sense. It's from a female point of view. So I think it's about them understanding the story. I think that is something that is important. And I think that's been lovely. And of course, it's not like, all men who are producers are not.
Yeah.
It's not like that. I feel like it somehow just kind of happened. And I think, of course, at the basic level, you need to work with people where there's mutual respect and they understand what you're trying to sort of do.
Yeah. But how hard is it to put your foot down sometimes if you don't agree with, maybe your co-writer or co-creator? How do you do that? Pooja told me something very interesting. She said, the way you handle power, in fact, you told her as well that power doesn't have to scream, power is. So you just be, and that's it. You don't have to scream out loud all the time. So when you have to say that you don't like something or you want to put your foot down, how do you do it?
I'm actually quite honest and upfront. I don't mince my. Actually, I'm very non-diplomatic, so it doesn't help much. But I've always, I mean, I have gravitated towards working in spaces where it's fine. So, for instance, when we were writing season one, Zoya, Rima, and I, it was a very democratic space. If I felt something, I could say it. I wasn't like, oh no, they are much more senior to me and whatever. It wasn't like that. We were writing it together. And if I felt something, I would say it and we would argue. You have to hear the other person out as well. And I do feel there can be a lot of growth with that. So it's not like anyone is saying anything, it doesn't make sense. I think the important thing is to hear everything out and then evaluate it and then take like a step forward. So you have to develop that sense of respect and understanding, I think, with everybody who you work with, because I feel like eventually you need to feel that whoever you're working with, whether it's a producer, it's a co-writer, it's another director, it's your crew, that they are only going to do things which are for the betterment
Yeah.
of the material. And I think if you can that it's coming from that space, I think it becomes very collaborative and quite easy. And I think that if one is listening to what the other person is saying and taking suggestions that work and not taking, so then of course when you also say something which they may not agree with, then it kind of
Right.
works out. And I haven't ended up being at loggerheads, honestly, with anyone in because I just feel like touch wood. But I feel like listening is also as important, and knowing that others also have a point of view, and respecting what the other person is saying, because they also have a stake in it.
How much is there self-censorship? There's a sense that, you can do this, but not any further. Politically, socially, is there a kind of boundary that you cannot cross?
Yeah, of course there is. I mean, in any case, I feel for Indian filmmakers like me, somebody who's grown up in India and grown up largely watching a lot of Indian films, um, definitely there's already a sense of self-censorship, because that there are certain things that one is conscious level of self-censorship and the other is subconscious, where you won't go there because you are operating in a particular society, in a particular culture, in a country with particular institutional mechanisms. So there is, of course, that sense of uh, awareness, and that sense of, like many things, I think, like your mind doesn't go there, only because that okay, it's not, it's not going to kind of work out. um but now I think with streaming and all that, there is a sense of like opening up. Like I could never have thought 10 years back that I could work on something like Made in Heaven, because I would feel like it's never going to be, you can't tell that story because it'll never be passed.
Why?
So
Just because the lead protagonist is gay, or is there other stuff there?
no, because the lead, from that perspective, because the lead protagonist is gay and we are going into his sexual life, and I would think that like if to do that in a film, I would have thought 100 times if I wanted to make a
Yeah.
film like that. But having said that, I feel it's important to tell our stories, whatever they are. We just have to learn to become more subversive.
Yeah.
I think that's the only thing I've realized, because uh, there's no kind of end to it. And I do feel eventually, like, I don't think humanity can do without stories. And I think we just have to keep becoming more and more ingenious in saying what we have to say. And that's it, because I don't know, like, also right now is a weird time. Theaters are like have to still get
Yeah.
back fully.
Yeah.
Streaming, we don't know, like, so I think it's also a strange kind of time. But I think a certain level of self censorship has always been there, and now it's just about being a bit smarter.
Right. And I think, yeah. What's your advice when young women come to you saying that they want to be a writer or director?
I mean, I normally tell them that to not worry so much about whether they have the talent or not, because I honestly feel everyone is talented, everyone has stories to tell. I only tell them that please ask yourself whether you have the emotional bandwidth to deal with the ups and downs that come with being a writer, and particularly if you want to be a filmmaker.
Yeah.
Maybe slightly less with a writer in these kind of times, because there's more opportunity. But like, if you can deal with rejection, and you can deal with waiting, you can deal with self-doubt. Though I definitely think things are much better now than they were when we were all assistant directors and trying to kind of make things happen, because there are many more opportunities now because of platforms like Netflix. But I think I always tell them that ask yourself if you have it in you to, stick it out, like have that resilience to stick it
Yeah.
out. Because I feel it's really about that. It's like, do you have it in you to be able to, uh, just get up the next day, no matter what has happened the previous day, and just kind of continue.
Right.
So I think that strength to continue is really the defining thing. I mean, that's all. And I feel like having some sense of conviction in what you're doing. I feel like it's hard to continue sometimes if you don't know why you want to tell that story. So I feel a little like that conviction is important, and I feel everything else, you can work on. And honestly, I don't. I mean, I feel like talent can be honed, your craft can improve, but it's very hard to stick it out. So I
Yeah.
just feel like that's really important.
How important has your training as a filmmaker been to your journey? Did you have to unlearn everything once you became an AD and once you became a full-fledged filmmaker, or did it help that you had been trained in the process?
I think it's helpful. I mean, it's very helpful. Like, I did my BA honors in journalism from
Yeah.
Lady Shri Ram College. I think that helped me a lot, because it trained me to, anyway, I was always reading a lot, but it just trained you to think critically.
Right.
So it was a really interesting course. And then I did my master's in mass communication from Jamia, which was also a very beautiful course. And I think that I think it's not about what you learn technically, because technology keeps changing, and
Yeah.
honestly you can figure all that out. I think it's the education is helpful in terms of opening up your mind. For me, so I don't feel like necessarily you need a film education, but I feel like an education in the liberal arts
Right.
overall can be quite helpful. I don't know, just being alive to, I guess, life outside. So I don't feel that education can go waste in any way. So I feel like my education at LSR and at Jamia, I think prepare, like, help me more, because I feel like it helped me grow as a person. So I feel like my closest friends, they're all from my master's course
Right.
in Jamia, and I think having that support system has been one of the most important things in my life, because my closest friends, they're all doing similar things, they all live in Bombay. And I think the journey for me wouldn't have been the same if I didn't have that support group. So I do feel that there are other ways. I think it's not like what you learn about how to use the camera so much, which I think you can pick up, but it's I think the other things that kind of, the books you've read, the plays you watched, the conversations you had, the films you've discussed. And I think that's for me what is more precious about that kind of an education.
Are there people from your class who are filmmakers as well currently?
uh from my class, yes, there's Akshay Roy, who
Uh-huh.
made this film called Meri Pyari Bindu. uh,
Right. Right.
there's Danish Aslam, who made
Break
Breaking.
ke baad.
Yeah, then he just made this series called Flesh. There's Aparna Purohit, who's
There's Amazon.
who heads Amazon. There's There are lots of people actually who are doing
That's very interesting, huh?
yeah, there's Sharat Kataria, who's 1 year senior,
Right.
who's made Dam Laga Ke Haisha
Right.
and Sui Dhaga. Then there are lots of people. There's Ravinder Randhawa, who's a writer who wrote Anarkali of Ara, and now I think he's writing Pippa. So there are lots of. There's Babita, who's a studio exec, I think at Abundantia. So there are a lot of people who are doing a lot of interesting
Interesting. So
things.
you meet up and you discuss your work, or is
Yeah,
there
some of them are like my really close friends, like Akshay and Danish. They are like my closest friends from college. So of course, we meet all the time and we discuss. I think we do discuss work, but I think it's just nice to have friends who understand what's going on in your life when you're really stressed about a shoot or you're like, oh my god, my edit is just not happening. You don't
right?
have to explain what you mean. They just kind of
Get it.
get it. So I do feel, and I've always maintained that it's really important to have a network of friends who are also doing the same thing. Like I feel like my friends Ruchi and Narayan, Anvita, and all, like, they're really, it's really nice to have like a good support system in that sense.
When you see young ADs on your set now, and you think back to yourself as a young AD with Prakash Jha beginning, do you see a lot more confidence in the younger women today, or uh, how do you see that?
It's a mixed bag, to be honest, because I feel like the aiding system has changed a lot.
Okay.
So when I started out, honestly, all over the film industry, that organized Hollywood kind of
Hmm.
aiding system was not in
Right.
place. So there was a lot of that traditional kind of aiding, which is more like guru shishya kind of aiding,
Right.
like you work with, which is how I was trained. I worked with Mr. Jha and I did everything. And it was like great learning because I just learned how to become responsible for everything. There was no like, this is not my job or that is not my job. There was nothing. If something went wrong, it was on me. So it trains you in a very different way.
Right.
um, Whereas I think the aiding system now is, it's more clinical.
Right.
So people are just doing their specific kind of jobs. And I don't know, I mean, I guess that has its own plus points because it's all very professional. There's a lot of paperwork, everyone's like on top of it, they're all on their walkies and very like, you know um but I feel, for me, maybe I have that kind of nostalgia. I feel like that other system taught you more about the whole creative process. Whereas I feel the system now, I think these girls are much more, girls and boys actually, they're much more organized, they're much more like sharp and all of that. But somehow I feel like there's become a bit of a distance between the creative process and what they are doing. So if someone's in charge of getting actors, they're just doing that.
Yeah.
They're at the van getting the actors, get the actor, like whatever, that kind of a thing. So it's become more like they have very, very specific
Big time. Yeah.
functions. But there are DAs, which are directors assistants now, which is was not there earlier. Earlier it was all kind of all in one. So I think they have it better because like now my DAs, they work with me the whole time.
Okay.
So they actually know everything. They're in on all my meetings. They are there when I'm doing short division, whatever I'm discussing with the DP, with the production designer. So they have a more holistic approach, and they also have to take care of things like coffee and all. But basically, and my schedule and all of that. But at least I feel like they are much more exposed to the entirety of the process. So I guess it's different now, but I think there's more opportunity for this generation now to start off much more quickly. They don't need to, I think, assist for so long if they're assisting to actually become directors, because they can actually make short films, put them up out there. And
Yeah.
so I think that opportunity is something that is fantastic that they have.
And one last thing, I can't resist this. What can you tell us about Made in Heaven 2?
Nothing. My lips are sealed. Can't say anything right now.
But you're shooting it, it's going to be
I
out
can't
this
say
year.
anything right now. I'm under contract to not say anything right now, so I can't.
We'll let you go at that, Alankita. Thank you so much. It was such a pleasure to talk to you and to learn so much about the process of filmmaking as well. Thank you and more power to you.
Thank you so much, Kaveri. It was lovely, lovely chatting with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
That was an intriguing conversation. Hope you enjoyed that session. If you want to catch the other sessions, you can log on to eventexpress.com, newindianexpress.com or edxlive.com. If you are more of a social media person, you can also join the conversation on Facebook, Twitter, or YouTube. Thank you for watching.